Hello and welcome to the latest of my deep dive videos. Today I want to explore with you a truly momentous event for us all. This is the conjunction between Jupiter, the planet of growth, hope, optimism, fortune and spirituality, with the true North Node. Now this is a point as opposed to a physical entity, and the true North Node on the 1st or 2nd of June, depending on where we are in the world, is going to be at 3 degrees 37. What makes this so incredibly important is that Jupiter and the true North Node have not been side by side like this ever since the 6th of May 1929. So it's a once in a lifetime event in this particular zodiac sign. So the true North Node is when we take into account all the mathematical changes that occurs. The nodes themselves, the South Node represents the part of our behaviour that we came into this world with, and it can be where we retreat in terms of our behaviour. The North Node is where we're being encouraged to embrace our future, manifest our true talents. And basically these 2 points is where the moon's orbital path crosses the ecliptic of the sun's apparent yearly path. And they're incredibly important. So when I'm working with a client, I look at where the North Node is and what sign it's in, say Cancer, but also what house, say the 9th house. And that informs me a lot, and other astrologers, of what the likely direction of travel that person wants to aspire to in this particular life. So incredibly important. Now there can be a little bit of confusion around this subject because the mean North Node comes into a conjunction with Jupiter at 2 degrees 26 on the 27th of May. Now, the mean node doesn't take into account all the irregularities that can occur. So there's about a 2.5 degree gap. But what's important to understand is that the conjunction between Jupiter and the mean North Node has been within 3 degrees since the middle of May, and they will be within 3 degrees through to the middle of June. But this point, when they come into an exact conjunction across the 1st or 2nd, I'll share where they are at what time in all the major cities of the world shortly, is a stunningly important event. Why should this be? Well, that's what I'm going to share with you in this presentation. I'm going to go through the themes of this aspect, also the opportunities that it provides to us. I'm going to share with you the event chart so we can relate to this all in terms of the overall zodiac, but also what does the Placidus natal chart tell us based on Universal Central Time and Greenwich. How can we relate to this in more technical astrology, because Saturn is on the ascendant, which is in itself potentially challenging. And then I'm going to go through each of the 12 zodiac signs from Aries through to Pisces to give you a flavour of what you can expect in terms of the sun or the ascendant. If you're new to my channel, thank you so much for joining us. I'd be honoured if you would subscribe. Please click or tap on the bell notification symbol. Every time I drop a video, you will get an update. If you're a returning visitor, thank you so much for joining me once more. If you'd like your free daily horoscope fired to your device each morning, please see the subscription link below. I've written these for 28 years. I think I'm unique amongst the YouTube astrologers for doing that. Also, if you would like to open up your own path of discovery in a much more potent way, if you do give me 3 pieces of personal birth data, of time, date and place of birth, I can produce for you your life roadmap report, which will give you an intimate understanding of the patterns that have played out in your life so far, but how you can grasp the opportunities more successfully, but also learn to deal with the more awkward issues that may come up from time to time, as they do for most of us. And then in my special package of 30% off, you get your 12-month personal forecast, totally unique to you, these charts. And these will give you seeing insights. If you don't know your time, I produce a solar package based on the sun. If you enjoy relating to sun sign videos on YouTube, these will make perfect sense and also provide enormous illumination. Please see the link below for more. So first up on the screen, I'm sharing where this event occurs in all the major cities of the world. Now, what are the themes of this particular influence? Well, you know that Jupiter rules two zodiac signs, Sagittarius, which is it's swashbuckling, galvanizing, very optimistic, self-confident, risk-taking, independent, freedom-loving, philosophy embracing, law creating presence. But what's less known is Jupiter's influence of Pisces, where it's the traditional ruler. So that's very much about the things we embrace to do with our higher selves in terms of the spiritual journey of our lives. But they're both coalescing around the energy of Jupiter in Taurus. What is Jupiter in Taurus about? Well, of course, it moved there on the 16th of May. If you want to check out my deep dive, please see below. You can get the link for that. Jupiter in Taurus is slowed down somewhat, but not in a negative way, because Jupiter can sometimes promise more than it can realistically deliver, and also trick us into being a bit too self-confident or taking things for granted. The more grounded, earthy sign of Taurus balances Jupiter's optimism in a very constructive way. So it does slow things down a bit. It is quite a challenge and will be over the next year for all of us around our diets, because Jupiter in Taurus, which is very much about food and sensual pleasures, is urging us to really enjoy those things. But we can, by embracing cooking things from scratch, making our lives that much more simple, but through that getting some kind of elevation in terms of our spirits. So we don't necessarily have to look at Jupiter in Taurus in a material sense, but it can point towards a love of money, because obviously the sign of Taurus is about everyday money, but it's also about our self-worth and our core values. So we have an opportunity over the next year to reform those approaches through the more spiritual dimension of Jupiter, which can be about knowledge. So our knowledge about resources, how we treat the earth, how we spend our money, and also what we base our core foundations on, can expand hugely with Jupiter's help. Now, the North Node has, of course, been in the sign of Taurus since around about the 13th of January 2021. So it takes 18 months to go through each zodiac sign. The next time that the North Node moves, it's in the middle of July when it retreats into the sign of Aries. And I think that makes sense to where we are as a person kind, because it's almost like new beginnings are shaping up. And the last time we had Jupiter and the North Node combining was also in an Earth sign, in the sign of Virgo in 2016. But let's just think about the lessons the nodes provide for us in our lives. So in terms of our personal chart, wherever the South and North Node are, they're always absolutely opposite, is a crucial factor. But this particular combination between the two is considered to be powerful and auspicious. If we think about the lessons that we're learning, and we're learning a lot about resources at the present time and what we're collectively striving for, we're trying to balance the books, because there's been an increase in interest rates, in raw food commodities, in the cost of fuel, and of course in the cost of living in terms of the properties we reside in, whether those are rentals or physically owned, but where a mortgage has to be serviced. So there's been some big realities. We're all having to chew on some realities. And as I mentioned before, the South Node can be very much where we retreat in terms of our comfort zone. Just so you know, my South Node is in the 7th house, which is relating to people. My North Node's in the 1st house, which is about creating your own individual way of being. But the node and the 1st house is where we have to work at our identity. Now, when we bring these two together, these two binding influences, Jupiter is about expansion and growth, and of course the North Node very much about the soul's purpose. So we may be presented with opportunities for growth and advancement if we can come to terms, come to a point of peace with where our situation is. Also, if you're someone who's really done a lot of good things for others, you could have some kind of karmic reward from now right through to the middle of June. And that could be very gratifying indeed. Now, it may not be that this is going to be in a material sense. It could be in terms of a sense of feeling fulfilled and solid, earthy, which is obviously very much about the energy of Taurus. And of course, Venus is the ruler. So Venusian Earth is about appreciation of arts and crafts, good food, good wine, sensuality in terms of intimacy. But this particular aspect can give us a healthy desire to acquire things. But the opportunities that could come up at this time could relate to new job opportunities. It could be to do with financial chances, or it could be to do with personal projects. The key here is to trust our intuition, because that's really what the North Node is about. And the part of our situation that gives us a sense of feeling solid is what we really should be embracing with at the current time. So now I want to share with you the solar chart. Now, of course, Jupiter conjunct the North Node in Taurus. I've pretty well explained those themes in the 2nd house. But we also have Mercury and Uranus pretty close together, not in an exact conjunction, but pretty close to one another, also in the sign of Taurus. But Mercury is in an opposition with the Moon. So balancing those two principles, how we think and how we act in terms of the immediate moment, Mercury, against the Moon in terms of the 8th house, is really where we can actually be a little bit anxious, but it also is where we can be more devotional. The 8th house is to do with shared resources, can be to do with very deep intimacy, but it can also be to do with transformations. So for example, if we're feeling really pinched around our resources at the present time, Mercury opposite Moon can see us think in a more anxious way about that. We also have Venus in Cancer, which is a very nurturing influence, but it's so late in the day in the sign of Cancer, even though it forges a beautiful link with Neptune, which can be enchanting, it is in an opposition with Pluto. And the key here, of course, is that Venus rules the sign of Taurus. So some stresses could come around relationships, but particularly around who does and contributes what, especially in terms of finance in this particular situation. So what about the event chart? Well, the ascendant is at 8 degrees 21 in Pisces, but Saturn sat right solidly on that point. It's just in the 12th house, which can create some anxiety. It is in a square with the Sun as well, which can affect our sense of self-belief and confidence. Some gossip can be doing the rounds, or the white noise of the internet can feed into our sense of security in an unhelpful way, despite the conjunction between Jupiter and also the North Node. So just be conscious of that. So Saturn in that 12th house could promote some anxiety, and it could also limit personal energy. And Neptune also, and Chiron for that matter, all in the 1st house, along with Jupiter and the North Node. So a new identity is being urged upon us in terms of how we view our values, which is the sign of Taurus, and it can be obviously linked to money, status and materialism. So we're being asked to sort of go with the flow, that there are these changes going on. So that just gives you a little bit of a flavour in terms of the solar chart. Big emphasis on house 2, everyday money, but the moon in house 8. In fact, you can see that in the technical chart, the moon is also in house 8, but Mercury and Uranus, unlike the North Node and Jupiter, are in house 2 still. So that's interesting. So we're definitely being asked to think outside the box a little bit with Uranus applying to Mercury, because the more we can innovate or change, and of course the sign of Taurus is fixed, so it can resist change, but we are being asked to evolve. And remember, Jupiter can be about knowledge. So the more open we are, essentially, to our relationship to resources, self-worth, the earth itself, good food, good wine, how we relate to people in terms of what they own or don't own, the more we can alter that in an enlightened way, the more we can gain from this quite magical event. Now, please stay with me as I go through each of the 12 signs from Aries through to Pisces. So for you, Aries, I feel that this can be a real good news story. Also, Mars in the sky is in your sister fire sign of Leo, and it's forging a great swashbuckling link to the sun in your 3rd house. So 3rd, 5th house, very galvanizing, so, and can be very social as well. But perhaps your great strength is your ability to start things again. You know, when things don't work out for you, you can dust yourself down and go again. It's just that Saturn could be creating, along with Neptune, some parts of your situation which are causing some sadness, because there is some endings or separations going on, and that may be having an impact on your financial status or situation, whether it's leaving a long-standing job, or perhaps a romantic partnership has come to a close, and some kind of new reality around resources may be coming in. But you have an opportunity to be enormously enterprising from this event right through to the middle of June. And remember, you also have the North Node moving into your sign. So on the back of the 2 incredibly potent lunations you had at the start of the Western tropical year with the new moon in Aries, and then with the solar eclipse in your sign, just as the sun was about to transition to Taurus, you've already had a big burst of new energy coming in. It's just needing to coexist with the role of Pluto, and therefore, obviously, at 3 degrees in the square to Pluto, you are needing to be mindful about how your values, your longer term, higher spiritual values, the sign of Aquarius, ally to the more physical reality of your life, which is governed by the sign of Taurus, and that means your immediate desire to consume money and enjoy things. So you're needing to balance that. Now, Taurus, for you, this just is a continuing story of evolution, of urging you to be open to how change can be so exciting. Your sign has had a legendary reputation of enjoying a degree of stability because of the fixed energy. So you've at times fiercely resisted anyone's suggestion that you should update or change any part of your existence, because having your comfortable routines gives you a real sense of security. But all that has been galvanized in recent years by the journey of Pluto and Jupiter through the sign of Capricorn. You're going to have more of that, of course, from the 11th of June. And again, next year, 38 weeks, Pluto will spend in Aquarius. So it will be spending some time in Capricorn still. But your biggest prime mover, I think, in terms of change has been Uranus. Now, if you've resisted change, and of course it depends where Uranus has been impacting on your natal chart, that may have been creating a lot of tension, because around us all, change is going at the rate of knots. Every time we switch on our devices and read the news, there's some kind of new development around technology or science or medicine. So things are moving so quickly. If we stay exactly as we are, the reality of life around us means that we're being left behind in a way. So it's great to embrace some elements of our traditional experiences and be a very solid, reliable player as you usually are. But I think Uranus has really been encouraging you to grasp the proverbial nettle and to loosen up and understand that change really can be as good as a rest. So if there's something you want to innovate about or bring new ideas in, or you want to change your personal identity in some ways, give yourself a huge makeover, or you want to really dive into a personal project which is very creative, this can be a very enriching opportunity for you to embrace. Now, obviously, if you do have any planetary influences around about 3 degrees in Taurus, this is going to be that much more enriching. Now that brings us to Gemini. For you, Jupiter and the North Node in this particular event, I think is going to be much more in keeping with the energies of Pisces rather than of Sagittarius. Now you may recall I said this in my Jupiter deep dive as well, and I'm sorry if it sounds like the same story, but the thing is, because your sign is predicated on air and mutability, your flexibility and ability to get on with lots of different types of people and swivel on a sixpence is your great gift. But sometimes talking or thinking away an issue or through an issue doesn't necessarily provide the deeper insights we really need. So you're being asked to dive deep just at a time when the sun in your sign has just entered into its second decan, which is very much about relating through the auspices of Venus, but it's forging a terrific link with Mars. So the Sun and Mars are really encouraging you to articulate your ideas, but this event is saying stay very much in touch with the more shadow side of situations, explore more deeply what really makes you tick, what your true needs are. If you feel that you want to shelter yourself a little bit at the moment, be a little bit more withdrawn, spend time just resting or recuperating, then take it. Don't judge yourself for that. Now, Cancer, for you, this wonderful event occurs in your sector of your future hopes, and that's very idealistic. And that actually works well with both Jupiter and the North Node. So set your sights high, not necessarily for material success, although obviously the energy of Taurus can deliver finance and money, but more in terms of what would make your heart sing, because that is what this can trigger. But you do have the Sun currently in house 12, but what helps you is that Venus is in your sign. So if you need to relate to people about any of your needs, you can do so with skill and delicacy, but also no little passion with Pluto in opposition. Of course, your ruler, the Moon, is in an opposition to Mercury, which is also in the sign of Taurus. And I think the Moon's just saying to you that whatever you're pursuing at the present time, it needs to be enjoyable for you, and you need to feel a sense of engagement or you'll get bored. Now, Leo, for you, I've been saying this for some while. Uranus has been pushing you to think about changing up your role in the wider world. It doesn't matter if it's in local community activities, whether you're on some kind of committee or organisation, or you collaborate with others in some kind of positive or constructive way, or it is more to do with your desire to achieve acclaim professionally, or it could be that your leadership talents, which are plentiful, could be directed towards your family life, and it may be providing support for younger children if you're older, and that could be something that's very gratifying for you as well. But some kind of shift in your world role is definitely unfolding. Are you ready to seize the moment? I think with Mars in your sign, soon to be joined by Venus on the 5th of June through to the 9th of October, the next few months can be sensational for you, Leo, but you have to step out of your comfort zone, because sometimes, despite your reputation for a rather regal air and your charisma, it does take someone else to push you a little bit, or some kind of alliance to really get you moving into new projects. So your fixed energy can prevent you from going for it in the same way as it can for Taurus. So don't fall into that trap. This is a time to initiate if you are wanting to receive much greater rewards or breakthroughs in terms of the things you want to be successful around. Which brings us to Virgo. Now, of course, the moon's in your sign on this event, but the collective is in the 9th house. So Jupiter, the North Node, Mercury, your ruler, and Uranus, house 9. This is all about the more Sagittarius energy of Jupiter. It's all about really wanting to widen your horizons. But your life is often predicated on making sure the details run in a very regular, ordered and meticulous way. You provide services to others which are incredibly valuable. But if your pragmatism is pulverizing your passion at the present time because you're almost being too dutiful, you could miss a huge opportunity to really open up your life in such an exciting way, not just through to the middle of June, but through to the end of May 2024. So seize the moment. So Libra, for you, Jupiter, the North Node, Uranus and Mercury are all in house 8, which is about transformations. But in a more prosaic way, house 8 is also about finance. If you're an entrepreneurial type of person, the hint is clear here. Jupiter can be about risk-taking and boldness. Uranus can be about innovation. Mercury can be about, in the 8th house, getting beneath the surface and understanding what the true machinations are that are going on. And the North Node can be your instinct. So if you're seeing business or financial opportunities, don't sit on your hands. Of course, you've got to do your due diligence and planning. You have at the moment the Sun in the 9th house of growth and exploration, very Sagittarius, and Mars is in a very friendly part of your situation, great for linking out to others. So if you do need to speak to some influential people, the next 2 or 3 weeks can really give you an enormous opportunity to create just the right impression to get the resources you need. In terms of the more intimate understanding of the 8th house, a transformation could occur in terms of challenging your air and your detachment that comes from the air, because the 8th house is about devotion. If you're in a situation where you're giving it everything but the other person is half out, this could be something that you're going to review. If you're lucky enough to be collaborating with someone and you're a brilliant collaborator who really is as invested as you, this could be a time of massive growth between you. Scorpio, this collective occurs in your sector of relating, and some real good fortune could unfold around relationships for you. But of course, the North Node and Jupiter are broadly within 3 degrees in a square with your modern ruler Pluto. So you have to be conscious of the politics of whatever you're doing around relationships. But the relationships don't have to necessarily be of a romantic kind. Any kind of alliance which is collaborative or cooperative can be something that's boosted hugely by this particular influence. Then again, if you're in a relationship at the present time and feel unheard, Uranus being in the 7th house still can still push you to keep reviewing the validity of this particular involvement. Now, Sagittarius, of course, for you, Jupiter is your ruler, and in the sign of Taurus, this represents house 6. So a great opportunity to use the enthusiasm of Jupiter to get fitter. Jupiter can sometimes see us do a bit too much. You know, if we're trying to reform our approach, there could be a temptation to actually try a little too hard. But lots of information can come in terms of nutrients, diets, exercise regimes, and the information that's out there, and of course you're an extraordinarily astute information gatherer, can really provide a whole pool of knowledge that can guide how you're going to reform things. But I also feel that some everyday parts of your structure could be due for some changes as well. You generally have a slight reluctance to engage with micro detail because you're really interested in the bigger picture, essentially. But you are being asked to grapple with that detail at the present time. But Mars is in a very Sagittarius part of your chart at the moment, and the Sun's engaging in your relationship sector, and they're collaborating brilliantly. So if you do want to interact with others, or go to a gym or a fitness club, or get together with a group of local park runners, a great chance to do that at the present time. Capricorn, for you, the 5th house is about joy, and it's about manifesting your individual hopes. It's about children, it can be about marriage, can be about joyfulness, sociability, mixing and mingling. You've got the lot here. It's absolutely fantastic. What's not to like? Well, it is true that the Sun is in a more pragmatic part of your situation at the moment. Your ruling planet Saturn is in house 3. You probably need to make sure that when things are organised, they're organised in a way which feels that it works for you. So I'm not necessarily suggesting that you're going to be completely gregarious and garrulous. If you're someone who likes to make sure that your duties are fulfilled and well met. But I think a little bit of rock and roll at the moment for you will do you the power of good. Aquarius, it's all about your home, emotional and family life, and some kind of big opportunity can come to pass through this event, which can bring so much more to your situation. Perhaps, like with Gemini and Libra, it's overcoming the detachment of your air and engaging with the earth of Taurus, but knowing that house 4 for you is very much Cancerian, so it's about how things feel. It's to do with your sensory perceptions. So any decisions you're thinking of making about where to live, how to live there, or who with, or actually amending a current abode, or perhaps moving altogether, let your sixth sense guide you. Don't go against your gut feeling, and that will protect you. It's possible with Saturn in your 2nd solar house that money is a bit on the thin side, but the decisions that you make, as long as you've done your research and scrutinised things carefully, can be very solid. Which brings us to Pisces, and of course Jupiter is your ruler as well, Pisces. And I just feel that with Pluto angling to Jupiter and the node in your 3rd house, there is a sense over the next couple of weeks that maybe you're not quite sure about how some people feel about you, or maybe some politics around you is impacting on your peace of mind. If you're someone who's very sensitive to what's going on in the world, and obviously some of what we read is very, very grim, it might not be a bad idea to kind of spin out a little bit for a couple of weeks, give yourself a sort of a circuit breaker, and have some true peace to think about the things, the 3rd house, and to communicate with the people that are important, siblings, neighbours, local committees and interactions, or the digital world in a way which is meaningful for you. But just be aware that Pluto in house 12, Saturn in your own sign, can create some exhaustion if you're overloaded. So limit your exposure to a lot of the white noise that we experience and focus on meaningful conversations, or learning or absorbing or sharing information that's really important to you. And that's the best way to get some magnificent support from this really unique event. It's been a real pleasure being with you. Thank you so much for joining me. Please do subscribe. It really would mean a lot to me. And please click or tap on the bell notification symbol. Thank you so much, and goodbye.